Holy cow, we got a heck of a show tonight. I figure if you can hear me like right now, share this. Tonight we got a great guest. Okay, Coach Randy friggin' Schrader. Okay, sit back. Get a Coca-Cola, because you know what, we're kind of a PG. We're kind of PG here. All right, again, I think I sucked. Now the sound won't shut off. Hang on. The joys of live, shows and stuff like that. Coach, we're so excited to have you here. You're a Hall of Fame coach, but you're also a Hall of Fame dude. I've been following you for a long time, but we've never seen each other face to face, I don't think. So it's a pleasure. I've heard nothing but great stuff. Do you know Mad Dog, Maddie?
No, I don't.
Do you know Keenan, Maddie?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. Keenan talks you up big time. But anyway, tonight, no holds barred, man. I'm excited to pick your brain. I'm going to let Coach Doherty ask the first question tonight.
Yeah, Coach. Thanks for being on, man. I always enjoy talking to you. So really excited about tonight. Just kind of give the listeners here kind of your background, your story, what got you into coaching, and just where you're at now.
Well, first of all, let's shout out to you on your strength program at Fort Madison for that national award you got, Coach.
Well, thank you.
I mean, that program of excellence is a big deal.
Thank you.
I don't know how many in the state of Iowa there was, maybe a handful that got that award. So that speaks highly of what you do at Fort Madison and the kids that you're touching down there. I mean, that's really a big deal. And hell of a recognition for your program, and credit to you, Coach.
Thank you very much.
Hey, you bet.
That man deserves a raise. Just going to throw that out there.
Coach and I talked about, was it 2 weeks ago, Coach? You and I were on a little bit about some other things that we're trying to. I was looking for some help on some things, and I talked to him then at that time about the great job that he's done out at Fort Madison with. You struggle down there and limited resources, and the things you've done, I follow that progress. It doesn't always show up in the wins and losses, but really it's just it's touching all those kids, giving them the opportunity to be successful. So that you should be proud of that. But I don't know if we have enough time to go over my entire background. I mean,
well, we could have a part 2 in a month, Coach.
It's a long and winding road to where I've been. I'll start it out with, I was a Southeast Iowa kid. I graduated from Pekin High School 51 or 2 years ago now, I think it was that. Paid for Coach Stone.
Spinnerback.
Yeah, Hall of Famer, Coach. So it's interesting. Wednesday, I did a podcast with a former player of mine from Clarinda that I had not spoken to in 35 years.
Wow.
And he's now in the leadership space. And we were talking about going back through and this and that. He always talks about people have had a big influence on you. Number one is my wife. I'm married to Homecoming Queen. We're going on 50 years of marriage coming up here. So, anything that's happened, brother, I'm telling you, it's because of her. Otherwise, I'd probably still be digging ditches and bouncing and fighting in bars if I hadn't married that woman. So,
Coach Doherty, he listened to last week's show.
So it's just one of those things. But I'm a Southeast Iowa guy. I grew up at Pekin. Ended up going to William Penn. Ironically, got hurt in the weight room. Ended my career before it really started. And my coach there, Jim Spry, came to me and he says, "Hey," he said, I need somebody to help me coach." And I said, "Okay, Coach, no problem." So I'd always been a hand in the dirt guy, and he wanted me to coach defensive backs. And I had no freaking clue what I was doing. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, zero. So that was 1981. I hooked up with a guy by the name of Ron Oswald. So Ron Oswald coached at Indian Hills and with Coach Spry when they won the national title down there. And then Oswald was a D coordinator at Drake for a while. And he actually played in the league. He was with Cleveland and with Minnesota. So Coach hooked me up with Ron, and he set me down, and I really learned football from Ron Oswald. Now, I learned to watch film on a 16 millimeter film, right, with an analyzer. So you sat back and forth, and you're splicing film, you're doing all those things. And he taught me defensive back football, how to coach it, technique, and all the other that went along with that, which is really good because talking about being outside of your comfort zone really fast. I think that really Coach Spry put me on that path to coaching, and Ron Oswald really helped me get ingrained in the game of football. They all told me I was ready to be a head football coach. So when I graduated, I took a job in Western Iowa at a high school that doesn't exist anymore. 375 kids, K-12. I was the head football coach, assistant basketball coach, head boys and girls coach. We had a track coach. We had 8 periods in a day, and I had 7 different classes. Now, different classes that I taught in the social studies department. It wasn't, 3 or 4 sections of U.S. history. It was U.S., it was world, it was psych, it was soc, it was 7th grade geography, it was geography. And on my prep, I was supervised a study hall. And so did all that for $12,000.
Wow.
So, and moved my wife out of a great job. She's a nurse, and she was head of a neonatal intensive care in Ottumwa. And we drove out to Western Iowa, and we didn't have anything. And she ended up getting pregnant with my daughter right off the bat. And I mean, it was. I mean, I don't know why she's still with me after that, but she was. So we were there for 2 years. Realized then, hey, I didn't really know what I should be doing. So went to Cherokee, Iowa, as an assistant coach with Dave Holdeman. And Dave, great coach. He ended up having some really good years at Marshalltown, turned that program around, had him into finals one year. That's when he threw the ball all over the frickin' yard. And I was Dave's D coordinator. I coached his offensive line and linebackers for him. Learned a lot of football. It was a good step back, and I was able to get my master's degree then at University of South Dakota. From there, I went down to Clarinda as the head coach, and I had a great 5 years. I had great 3 years in Cherokee too. We had some freaking studs when we were in Cherokee. I mean, it was Adam Timmerman, who ended up playing in the league for years as an offensive lineman. At one time, he was the highest paid offensive lineman in the league. Won a Super Bowl with Green Bay and one with the Rams. Parker Wildeman, who was an all Big Ten nose guard, up at Iowa. His brother Paul was a frickin' stud. I mean, we had some studs at Cherokee. Then went down to Clarinda for 5 and was the head football coach down there. Started out as an assistant basketball coach. That was probably a mistake. It was, you go right for, well, I'll backtrack. I was the head girls freshman basketball coach at Cherokee for 3 years. I coached 6-on-6 basketball and transitioned into 5-person basketball. I had an undefeated freshman group my last year there. 4 of the 5 are now doctors. Wow. So as dumb as I was, they made me look really good, right? So you just got to be at the right place at the right time. So go to Clarinda, end up being the head football coach. I was the head track coach there for a while. I was the head softball coach for 2 years. And we had some great players when I was in Clarinda. We ended up in the semis one year, and BJ Windhorse, who did a great job at, he 3 straight state championships at Valley in basketball. He was one of the guys that played for me, and Nick Thummel, who was a young man who played for me. We ended up at Iowa, and Mark Schill, and I still keep in contact with those 3 guys. And spent 5 years there. Then I went to North Scott for 9. That was an interesting thing because they were in the midst of a 20-game losing streak when I went up there. It was tough. I tell people, a lot of people ask me why I took that job. We definitely knew that it was going to be a hell of a job because the facilities were terrible. They were a 4A school at that time, the MAC conference. So Bettendorf, which was the standard in 4A football, was in that league. Mervyn Hobnick was the coach. He won 5 titles up there. We go up there, and I laugh tell this story. When we first went there, my wife, who was a track athlete, a 400-meter person, a cross-country runner, she out-squatted my lineman in the weight room. That's how weak we were. It was just freaking terrible. Our weight room, when I went up there, we had some dumbbells, a bench, and a universal machine. I bought 3 power racks, put them back in my pickup, and put them up there, and we started from nothing. And I don't know, Coach Doherty, if you've seen their new facility up there.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful.
Yeah. We were literally, it was the same thing when I was in Clarinda. We were in a closet when we were lifting there. But we had a great administration when I was at North Scott. Pat DeLuca was our superintendent. He hired me. It was interesting. I worked for in the state of Iowa. We had a female school board president. We had a female high school principal, and we had a female athletic director. I don't think there's any place in the state of Iowa that had that. So it was interesting for me, a big ego, meathead, and having to learn how to get along with these leaders that were females. So spent a good 9 years there. Won some games, got it turned around, got it on solid ground, and then I got out of coaching for 2 years. I took the district athletic director job for the Davenport School District. Probably the biggest mistake I made from a personal standpoint was I didn't get the opportunity to coach my son. Mm-hmm. And I should have done that. I should have stayed till he got out, but he was coming in as a freshman, and and I took that job and was there did it for 2 years. Professionally, it was a good move. Personally, it was a terrible move. I should have never. So if you got children, coach them. You got to coach them. Coaches' kids are special kids. It's a tough gig, to be a coach's kid, especially the head football coach. I think it's just that much tougher. At that time, I was also a dean of students at North Scott. My daughter had to go through that. And she, there's some interesting stories on some of the stuff that she tried to get away with. I just go, God, are you just a dumbass that I'm not going to fight this? Really? So, but we lived through it, right? So after a couple of years, they eliminated that position, and they put me as the athletic director at West High School. And West at that time was the second largest high school in the state of Iowa. Well, Paul Flynn, who had been the head football coach there for a long time, had resigned. And so I just said, just give me the football job too. I'll take it. And I had a freaking staff that was lights out. I had Chad Remmert. Chad might be the best football coach or coach period that I've ever had the opportunity to be around. His brother Brad is the head coach of Cedar Falls High. And Chad is up there coaching with him now. But Chad Remmert is by far the smartest football guy I've ever been around. He's just unbelievable. Dad was a longtime coach at UNI, and Chad was amazing. Tim Brunken, who just retired at North Scott as a defensive coordinator, was on my staff. Dale Tufte, who was, those guys were with me at North Scott. I was able to bring along, and now he's still at North Scott coaching. I had Skip Eckhart, was my offensive line coach there. We had a freaking all-star football staff, just a group of really good guys. And we just couldn't get it turned around. It was just tough. And 3 years we were there. And then my wife, she got recruited to Rockford, Illinois. And it was time for me to follow her. It was just time. All of these moves was all about where I was chasing this football thing, right? It's going to be the next thing, next big thing. And I was just fortunate to surround myself with really good people, really good kids. And we were able to have some success where we're at. So we go to Rockford. I actually got offered a job. There's 5 public high schools in Rockford. Got offered a job as an assistant principal at Guilford High School. It was Rockford College, which I didn't even know exist, a football team. The coach there was a longtime defensive coordinator at Loris College, Mike Hoskins. And I thought, well, geez, I know Hosk. He's recruited us at North Scott. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I'm coming up there. You got any coaching openings? I mean, at that time I was 50 years old. He goes, yeah. I said, why don't you come be my offensive coordinator? I went, oh, coach, man, I'm a wing T guy. Are you sure you want me?
Wing T flex bone.
We're downhill. We're going to run the ball 99.9% of the time and only going to throw it because I think we need to at least once a game. The perfect football game is having no forward passes, right? That's how you know it's a perfect football game.
Did you ever have the waggle pass?
I did, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Got one to waggle, run the wing T, right?
See, man?
Yeah.
See?
I mean, you run it right off that, buck sweep. You'll waggle that thing out there.
Yeah.
That's the whole shooting match right there, brother. So Hoskins hires me, and the college, the enrollment's about 1,000. It's right in the middle of Rockford, low-level Division III. They're in financial issues, but I'm like, yeah, I'm 50 years old. When am I ever going to get another chance to get on the college football field? So they hire me at the end of July, and 3 days later, Hoskins quits and goes to Southern Oregon as a defensive coordinator because his offensive coordinator had become the head coach at Southern Oregon. So the AD comes to me and he goes, we're kind of in a jam here. Would you think you could take over this head coach? Well, hell, I can do this. This won't be a problem. But I don't know any of the kids. I've never met one of the players. We hadn't even got reconditioning in. I don't know where equipment's at. I call up Coach Eckhart. He was at Davenport North then. I said, hey, Coach. I said, here's the deal. We're a couple of old Iowa frickin' high school coaches. Will you come over and be my offensive line coach and offensive coordinator? If we screw this up, there's never going to be another high school coach to ever get an opportunity like this. So Coach says, oh, hell yes. He piled everything in, hired him. We had 3 GAs and 2 stipend guys. And by God, we went 7-3. So, but I'm going to tell you, some of the teams we played, we could have played backwards and won. we had some really good players, really good. So we had 2 really good years. We played the UMAC. Then they put it for some odd reason, they thought we need to be in another conference, which is the Northern Athletic Conference was the name of the conference. And we just didn't have the facilities or kids to complete. So I was there for 2 years. Those 2 years in the next conference. So 4 years there, 2 years just were outstanding. And I needed 4 years to complete my IPERS. And so the Washington job came open. And just so happened that the interim superintendent at Washington was the principal that hired me for my first job out of college. Dave Sextro passed away. He's passed away now. Great guy. And I played softball with Dave in the summers. He played fast pitch softball. And his rule was you can only miss a game for one thing: death, yours. That's the kind of guy he was. So they had a dean of students job. The guy they offered the job to turned it down. I called him up. Donnie Knock is who it was Don Knock. Mm-hmm. I said, Don, why'd you turn the job down? Well, he was the AD at that time. I think it was Ballard, maybe. And he said, well, I couldn't go for the money. Just wasn't. Well, most of you, I mean, at Division III, they're not going to pay you nothing what I was making. So money wasn't the issue. I just needed to get back into IPERS. And so got that job and ended up playing for a state title 4 years later. Retired. My wife gets recruited down to St. Joe, Missouri in 2016. I unretired and volunteer coach for LeBond High School, little Catholic high school here in St. Joe. The Savannah, Missouri job opened up 2017, 18, 19. I was there. We had 2 really good, my last 2 years there. We had really good kid again. We had tremendous. My quarterback was a first-team All-State shortstop.
Wow.
Okay. One of my halfbacks is a first-team All-State second baseman. We just had really, really good kids, multi-sport kids that love football. And COVID hit. set out COVID. I think I was glad I did, guys. I don't know how you coach during COVID. I mean, I really don't. That was just, I can't even imagine what that was like. In 2021, are you tired of listening to this now?
No.
In
Awesome.
2021, Garrison Carter calls me. He's at ADM. Garrison had followed me at Washington, so that we had that connection there. And we had bought a townhome in Waukee. That's where we plan on retiring, which is a 15-minute drive to Adel. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, would you want to come up and volunteer and just kind of help coach the coaches? You know, would you be willing to be like a mentor?" He says, "I'm kind of stuck." And Garrison does a great job. I just spoke to him today on the phone. Here's the thing about that Garrison did. He got kids in the weight room. He got kids out for football, and he knows offensive football. I mean, he just does. If Garrison could just draw plays all day long, he's like a kid in a candy store, right? I mean, that's all he needs to do. So he needed help just kind of massaging his defensive staff and special teams and things like that. So I said, "Oh, yeah, why not? We'll do that." Well, here's where Coach Eckhart comes back into the picture. So Coach Eckhart has retired at, I don't know, one of those alphabet schools that is at Ackley. And we're sitting in a bar in Des Moines. It's myself, Coach Eckhart, BJ Windhorst, and Tracy Hook, who's a longtime principal at Sadell, was also a longtime coach at Corning, head basketball coach at Corning. And I said, "Hey, this guy down at ADM, I think I'm going to go down and help him." He said, "He needs an O-line coach. You want to go down and check this out?" And of course, if you know Coach Eckhart, he's grumpy. I said, "You just get in the car. Let's go down." Well, he hired Coach Eck as the O-line coach. So we go down there for 3 years. The last year in 23, I was the interim head coach at ADM. And, always ifs and buts for candies and nuts. We'd all have a Merry Christmas, right? Well, that year we had some freaking studs, right? I mean, we had, Aiden Floor, who's doing great things at Iowa State. And we had, we were good. It was just like everything lined up wrong that year. First game of the season, our Mike linebacker goes down with an ACL. Done. Our best lineman only played four games that year. Drew Hickey, he's having a good career right now at Grandview. Brevin Dahl, who probably was the best back in the state, breaks his frickin' arm against Lewis Central in the second quarter. And we still should have beat their ass. So, I mean, we are like banded group going down, and we still got in the quarters, and we got beat by LC, who ends up winning it that year. Great football team. Coach does a great job over there. I mean, we played Lewis Central when I was at Clarinda. Okay, that was my first game at Lewis Central. If they'd had the 50-point rule then, they just beat the dog shit out of us. Okay, but they've always had really good football. And Coach has done a really good job over the last few years. I mean, he's got obviously got players, but you got to coach them too, right? So then I set out the 24 season. So last fall, I'm setting up in our place in Waukee. I'm drinking good bourbon and watching Sunday Night Football. It's week 2. I get a call from Joel Osborne, who's the head coach at Benedictine. And Joel's a Harlan guy, right? He says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm drinking whiskey and I'm watching football." He says, "Hey, we need some help at Mar Hill Mount Academy in Atchison, Kansas, which is a Catholic boarding school." I had no idea it even existed.
Huh.
And he goes, "We're having some men, not very good. They just got beat 62-7, and you don't have many kids out. I want to know, would you be willing to come over? They want to get rid of the head coach." And I go, "No, I'm not interested." I said, "First of all, this is high school football. It's going into week 3. I said, unless he beat the hell out of somebody or did something really egregious, you don't fire high school football coaches. You just don't." Guy was 29 or 30, Zach Fredrickson, great young man, played at Benedictine. St. Joe kid. Said no. I said, "Well, will you listen to the AD?" So yeah, so the AD female calls me up, tells me the same thing. So I'm not interested in being the head coach and you firing somebody. I said, that's not good for anybody involved. I said, "But I will sit down and visit with you." So I go over, we talk, I meet the coach. I said, "I don't think the coach is the problem." I said, "Do I think he should be a head coach? No, I think he was just thrown in there. He doesn't have he doesn't have resources for one. And there's 24 kids on the team. 4 can't speak English. Our kicker is from Dubai. Our right tackle is from Jamaica. With 3 weeks left in the game, we get 2 twins from the Cayman Islands who have never played football before show up. So that's what we're dealing with, right? That's what we're dealing with. So they fire the guy who was the offensive coordinator. His best buddy was an assistant. He quits. So now it's me, the former head coach. Our defensive coordinator is a great kid out of LeBlanc here in St. Joe, played at Benedictine, great player. He drives a beer truck in St. Joe. And then we hire a guy that's a financial aid AGA in Benedictine that played for Joel. And we're off and running. By God, we won the first game 52-7. So everybody thinks I'm a genius, right? We installed a new offense in 3 days. And then we end up winning 3 games. And so this year, sitting at home and to get a call from Coach Eckhart, he says, "Hey, I'm looking at the Nottoway Valley job. Would you come with me?" "Coach, no, I don't coach anymore. I'm not interested." I said, "I got to get my wife retired. We'll see." And then she decides finally she's going to retire in June. So we're going to be moving up. We work some numbers, and lo and behold, I'm going down to Nottoway Valley, assistant coach this year. So that's where I'm at, guys. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's awesome. Was Skip like all crusty and says, "You're coming, dang it"?
You got to know, Coach. I mean, I've known Coach since 1982. He's my son's godfather, right? I mean, we coached against each other. When I was at Dow City, he was at Schleswig. When I went to Cherokee, and we ended up winning the state title at Schleswig in 85, I think it was, 86. And I was at Cherokee, and I drove down and helped him with that. When I was at Clarinda, that's when he was up at UNIGA, and then he got the South Page job. When I was at Clarinda, he come up and helped us in the semifinals that year. When I was at North Scott, I hired as my D coordinator after he was from Central. We went to the Cresco, the Central, and then I hired him my defensive coordinator. He was the interim coach at North Scott when I left to be the AD at Danmore School. So then obviously hired him at West, hired him at Rockford College, coached together at ADM. So, yeah, I've known this guy for a long time. And there is not a better offensive line coach in the state of Iowa. I really believe that. I mean, he's like a kid magnet, right? And he's such a great technician. He's able to get kids to play well above their talent level. And as you guys know, as coaches, I mean, you take a lot of just average kids and get them in the weight room and working hard and doing those things and believing in each other, you got an opportunity to be successful. I mean, you can offset that talent gap just by that strength and toughness thing. And I really don't believe people like smash mouth football anymore, right? They just don't like it. I do too, and I love it. And I think you can win a lot of games just running the ball downhill and getting after people and breaking their will.
Buck sweep, waggle.
Yeah, but you got to coach it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you got to coach it, and there's all kind. I've gotten more. I mean, I've coached everything. When I first came out of college, we were split back veer, right? We ran split back veer. That's what they can. That's what I'd seen run at William Penn, and so we went out split back veer. Then I've been an I coach. I've been a wishbone coach, and I went to the wing tee when I read an article by Eric Parsegian when he was at Notre Dame, and he talked about if you've got 3 really good backs, run the wing tee because the misdirection involved in it, those type of things. I've been quick huddle. Now they call it sugar huddle, right? Well,
yep.
Dwayne Twait was running that in the 80s at Emmitsburg and won 7 state titles up there running that quick huddle stuff. Reese Morgan did the same thing at Iowa City West. He was running that quick snap, 5 yards, run up, boom, and he won 3 state titles, right? So we ran it when I was at North Scott for years, and then we went to double wing. We called it belly, but it was double dive, and stayed with it. And we stayed that wing tee, sugar huddle, quick snap until we were at Rockford College, and our quarterback broke his thumb, so he couldn't take a snap. So this would have been in 2007. And Coach Eckhart and I said, what are we going to do? And he says, hey, why don't we go to this short shotgun? Didn't even know what it was called then.
Pistol,
short
right?
shotgun look that Nevada runs, right? Nobody was running pistol. Nobody was running except for Nevada, right? And he goes, why don't we take a look at what they're doing? The short shotgun stuff. And so we went to that, and we still run all of our wing T stuff out of that. Maybe it's because we weren't very smart. I mean, that might have been part of it. And from that point on, we haven't been under center since 2008.
Wow.
I've stayed in that pistol and done some offset stuff with that, and morphed into maybe some diamond stuff, that we've done. And we go to down Nottoway Valley, we'll be pistol down there, just because of some of the stuff it does, but it's rooted in wing T football, right? It's wing T football. Now we're going to run, everybody runs power read, we're always going to be a zone read team. We're going to put some midline in. We're going to run buck. We're going to run trap. We're going to run down G, all those wing T concepts out of pistol. But yeah, it's a great, very adaptable offense. But again, you got to coach what you know too, right? So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Ben or Derek can ask the next question.
Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah. You kind of mentioned it a few times, but you've kind of taken over some difficult situations and helped rebuild a lot of different programs. When you walk into one of those programs, what are the first things you're evaluating?
Well, I'm going to tell you, in the interview process, when I go into a program or place to interview, one of the first people, I always go early, so that if it's a one horse town, and this is really key, and a lot of people don't. They want these jobs, but one horse towns are gold mines, right? Because you are the biggest show in town on Friday night. There's nobody you're competing against. You get in a multi-high school district, and that was a problem that we had in Davenport, because Central, West, and North, right? So it's always, well, they got this. How come I didn't get it? Well, get off your ass and go out and raise the money, or whatever the case might be. But if I'm in Fort Madison, Iowa, I'm the biggest show in town, right? When I was in Clarinda, every kid in Clarinda, when you start out in kindergarten, you're a cardinal, right? You're a cardinal all the way through. When I was at North Scott, you're a lancer. Everybody's a lancer. In Washington, everybody's a demon. Everybody's a demon. When you go to Nottoway Valley, everybody's a Wolverine. You're a kindergarten, you're a Wolverine. You're a senior, you're a Wolverine. I mean, that's just the way it is. ADM was getting that, but you had people moving out into the community because it's growing so much. So you have to build that culture. But you drive around the town, you talk to the banker, you talk to the real estate guy, and you ask him, hey, what's going on? And then you go into high school and you talk to the freaking cafeteria workers and the janitors. They know everything that's going on in the school. I mean, everything. That janitor will tell you, every teacher that's a dumbass, what the problem is. This kid, those lunch ladies, I'm telling you, they'll tell you how whether they're respectful kids, disrespectful kids, the whole 9 yards. They know everything. Those two, you've got to take a look at. The next place I go, I always go into a weight room, and I want to see how it's, number one, how it's organized, and if it's picked up. Because if the weights are where they need to be and it's a picked up room, that shows me they're disciplined in there and it's important. But if you go into a weight room, there's weights on the floor, weights on the bar, this and that and whatever. Well, there's issues there, right? There's issues there. And then you got to make sure you got, and nowadays I think it's tougher than ever, is you got to have a good administration. Back in the day, the football coach became the assistant principal, became the AD, became the principal, became the superintendent. Because you had a football coach in every one of those, and football coaches make decisions. Now, I'm not trying to belittle other sports, but I am obviously partial to football. But football coaches make decisions. Good ones do. If you're wishy-washy, you're never going to last in the business. They'll run your ass out of town on a rail in a heartbeat, because parents will be all over you. Administrators try to push you, this and that, whatever. But you've got to have an administration that it needs to embrace change, because if you're a change agent. You know, when you come into poor programs, you are a change agent. I'll tell you a story. So Pat DeLuca, who hired me at North Scott, told me, he says, I'm tired of going at halftime of football games, going to the bathroom on your own. Everybody's bitching and moaning about how bad our football team is. I said, well, let me tell you something. Here's what's going to happen. They're still going to bitch to begin with. I said, and then we're going to begin to win. And the more we win, the more they're going to bitch. You're still going to have the complainers, because somebody's always going to, well, you shouldn't be as hard on the kids. You shouldn't demand so much. Why is he doing this? Listen, it is freaking hard. It's hard to get. I mean, you got to ride herd on kids.
Why the hell is this guy still running buck sweep? It's 3rd and 30.
Exactly. Well, we ran inside trap. We would call it 32 trap 11 times in a row against Muscatine to win a football game. So if it works, if it's working, you run it till they stop it. Then you run it one more time to make sure. So that's our philosophy. Never be afraid of running the same play 2, 3, 4 times. But back to my point is, you got to have your standard. And you can't waver from that. If I'm going to demand that you're going to be, these are the things that we're going to do. And a lot of times it's really small stuff that's going to make the big difference. Right, Coach? I mean, it's like, pick up the piece of paper when you walk by it. Pick your shit up in the locker room. Pick your stuff up, when we're walking off the practice field, all those little things, and they'll take care of business in the freaking classroom, set in the front row, although every teacher is alphabetical, right? Well, Coach, my name is Zigloski. I don't give a shit. You sit in the front row and make the move. That's okay.
Highlight that. Yeah.
So everything you do, have your kids wear a tie on away games. It brings, it's just that class thing. So, there's a plethora of things that you want to take a look at, but it really boils down to getting as much information as you can and just making that decision. I'm interviewing you as you're interviewing me, right? I told Coach Doherty, I interviewed for the Johnston job. I think it was 2002, 6-hour interview. It was a 6-hour interview for a high school football job, 6 hours. And then I've also had some to 30 minutes and they hire you, so it's like, I don't know, but you've got your philosophies, how to build a program, you understand your base. In my opinion, it's got to start in the weight room and then holding people accountable. And then you begin to surround yourself at high school level. It's really hard because you're not going to be able to bring people with you in terms of staff. Right. So 99% of the time you're dealing with the people who are there, and the reason being the head coach is gone, the assistants are there, and you've been shitty, right? You haven't been very good. Well, what's the reason, right? What's the reason you haven't been very good? And, maybe it's bad coaching. I mean, turn the film on, it never lies, right? We've turned the film on at Nottoway Valley, and I put the ACGC film on, and Cody Masson, who was down there, did a great job when he's down there. He's at Van Meter now. But they physically kicked the snot out of Nottoway Valley on both sides of the football, right? So I go to the guy who's run the strength program, and ask him what he's doing. He's a good young guy, Kaylor Clark, great guy, very open to things. And I just told him, we physically got our ass handed to us. We got no strength. It's like my wife always says. I always look for football players. How do I know if you're going to be a good? I look at your legs and your ass. And if you've got glutes and you've got hamstrings, we got a chance. Yeah. Right. So we got to get in the squat rack and go from there. So, it really is just do your research, man. You got to do your research, hold tight to your beliefs and your values. Obviously you got to tweak them as you go through it, because you're always going to run across something that's like, oh man, I got to have to navigate that freaking waterfall sometimes. But yeah, Coach, I think that's really it. Just you gotta, and then God, you gotta believe right in your heart. You gotta believe in your heart what you're doing, and then you just keep preaching. You just keep preaching, and don't weaken. I tell people all the time, my calluses are really thick, You got to go deep. For me, bro. You got to go deep. And I don't think there's anybody out there can get that deep now.
I love that. That's awesome.
I want to take a moment now because we've kind of been lost in the translation here, but I do want to give a shout out to our one and only Coach Show sponsor. It's Riverside Resale Shop. You need to check Tennille's shop out, man. 75% off this week. It's a thrift store. Go get your thrifts on Riverside Resale Shop. I see. I didn't spit and sputter that too much. Now, the most important thing is how many personal flags have you received in your career?
Have I received?
Yeah.
And then I want
to know how many Skip has.
If I don't know, I don't know. That would be something I don't think I've ever been around that he's got one. I know I've only been ejected from one game in 31 years as a head football coach. Yeah. And that was a wrong ejection. The official screwed up. He did.
Oh my God.
I'll tell you, and here's another story. So I'm just telling you, when you coach college football, you can get away with anything.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can.
Yeah.
You can coach on the numbers, right? Out on the field. Nobody. So I've been 4 years in the college game, and I came back to Washington, and we're playing Mid-Prairie, and we're up there, and we're winning. And I'm standing, and I'm just coaching like I've been coached the last 4 years, and all of a sudden I get a flag. There's a flag flies, and I'm looking around. I go to Fish. I said, what's going on? What was that flag for? She says, Coach, look where you're standing. Well, I was out on the numbers, But after 4 years earlier, it didn't make a big difference, but I had to adjust. As you go through it. So yeah,
you needed a good get back coach.
I did need good get back coach. I did.
Holy cow! You might be my favorite all time guest so far. So if you want to come on a weekly basis, you just come on. Anyway, I'm gonna let Dee Dee ask the next question.
Yeah. So you were kind of talking a little bit about it. In these rebuilds, how important is the community buy-in?
Well, Coach, that's so big, especially like I say, you get into the one-horse towns. You become you're a politician. And you really are, because you're trying to figure out, how it goes. Now, when I leave, I left, and I tell this story all the time. You can walk down one side of the street in Eldridge, and they're going to say, God, he's a hell of a guy. You walk down the other side, and they're going to say, he's the biggest horse's ass that we ever had in this community. That's in this business.
I still get that in Donaldson, and I live here.
It's just part of, because you can't please everybody. It's just that, unfortunately, that's the way it is. Although I've coached with some guys, I don't know if anybody's ever said a bad word about them, and that's fine. They have their own way of doing it, and that's okay. But so I'll use North Scott as an example. So we didn't have a youth football program when I went there. So I think it was 90. So my son was a fifth grader. I don't know, 95, maybe something like that. Dan Schneckloff, who was a realtor in town, had two sons that played for me. And he said, what do you think about a youth football program? Because Davenport Assumption had a Rising Knights football program, and it was a siphon for kids because it was the only youth football program in the tackle in the area. So they were drawing kids, it was a fertile recruiting ground. It just was really a first, and they have to, right? They're parochial school,
right?
Just the way it is. Mark Kazmarek was the head coach there for years. Tim O'Neill, Tim, was a power lift for years. I coached against Tim when he was in high school. Believe it or not, Tim was a linebacker fullback.
No kidding.
In the wing tee at Davenport. So anyway.
See, Ben?
Yeah. But now you look at Tim, no way. But, he was a nose guard freaking you and I. But Dan said, what do you think? And I said, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And they went out and raised all the money for a fifth and sixth grade tackle program. So that monetary support, and now it just kept on going, right? And the advantage that I had there, again, when I hired the coaches, I wrote the playbook, right? And so I had complete control of my program, 5, 6, 7, 8 high school, right? And so when my son was in 5th grade, he could stand on the high school sideline and say, "Hey, Dad, that's 46 power. Hey, Dad, that's 32 trap. Hey, Dad, that's 48." Because that was the same base plays that he was running in 5th grade.
Wow.
And so we just kept rolling it over. And so we had tremendous, tremendous support. Our booster club at that point in time was raising over $100,000 a year.
Wow.
And so anything that I wanted as a matter of fact, our booster club president one year come to me and he says, "Coach," we said, "we got all this extra money. What do you need? What do you want?" Coach Eckhart tells the story all the time. Him and I, Jefferson used to have a football clinic years ago, and it was right on the same level as the Southern Iowa clinics. We had 4 speakers going at a time. It was my first or second year at North Scott. We didn't have a sled, didn't have a 7-man sled, and it must have been Rogers had a 7-man sled at this clinic. I called my AD up and says, we really need this sled. She goes, "Well, give me the information and go ahead and buy it." I mean, that doesn't even happen, right?
No.
I mean,
no.
it just, yeah, buy it. Hey, I need this, buy it. Need this, I need buy it. It was unbelievable. We had a director of operations, Dean Bassett. He's passed away now, but so, I mean, we didn't have any, I mean, our field was not good. Our practice field was, it never had water. It was like concrete the whole 9 yards. And when I left there, we had 3 full watered grass practice fields. They redid a guy 7 city sods, come in at the end of the season. The second year I was there, tore up the entire field, resodded the whole thing. I mean, that's the kind of community support that we had at North Scott, and they still have it, obviously.
Yes.
You're never going to be successful, especially if you're lagging in that facility aspect of things. Now, the key to that, it helps when you have success.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, everybody wants to be on the bandwagon, but when you get in those one horse town, they see good things, and kids are talking good, like your strength program. You look at what you've done with your strength program, and then the entire student body has been affected in a positive way by your strength. You cannot get better PR than those kids out there talking about that, right? And in the way you market it on your social media, or if you get the local radio station, newspaper to do those stories.
Dog Pound Radio.
Yeah, that's
Anyway.
right. Remember, it's always news, weather, and sports, right? News, weather, and sports. And I don't care what anybody says. Your athletic program is the front porch of your school.
Mm-hmm.
It is the front freaking porch. And the one that starts the school year off is your football program, because it is a numbers game. You can have great cross country and your volleyball, and I get they are important, but football, because it's a numbers game, it affects so many people in a positive way. And the discipline that you instill in your program carries over to everything that's going on in there. And that is a snowball effect in your community. Now, people are always going to bitch, "Well, guys, we aren't winning very many games." Yeah, but our freaking kids are tougher now, right? I mean, they conduct them. Yeah, we all want to win. I mean, that's the bottom line. And we're all judged by that, because at the end of the night, the scoreboard never lies. No, it never lies. It's cut and dry. That scoreboard says you won or you lost. And I've always said this: I think it is harder to sustain success than it is to build it.
Mm.
I always like the build. That's the fun, and stacking those bricks every day and making those. And then when you get there, because when you get there, you still can't forget what got you there, because you start, well, maybe that's not that big a deal. It's going to bite you in the ass, right? It's going to bite you in the ass.
Absolutely.
So it's that day by day by day by day process that you fight every day of getting in the weight room, being a good human being, taking care of grades, making sure you're not being a dumbass out in the community, all of those things to sustain that and never let complacency creep its ugly head into your program, because that's when you're going to get your ass kicked. And you start to lower that standard a little bit for that good kid. That's okay, because Johnny, he's pretty good. Well, everybody else is seeing that, right? They're all seeing that. Sometimes you got to bite the freaking bullet, kick Johnny's ass to the bench. For the most powerful thing you got as a coach is playing time.
Yeah.
That's your biggest motivator. It's playing time. You don't do that. There's not a coach in America. There's not a coach in America that doesn't play a kid that's the best at that position, that's done the things that he needs to do to get on the field. Not a coach in America. I never checked a bank account on my starting players. I never checked their parents' bank account, see how much money they had in the bank. We playing because he got money. How in the hell would I know how much money his parents got? Got no idea. If a kid's been in the weight room, been doing everything we've asked him to do, took care of business in the classroom, tough enough, his ass is going to be on the field, period. He hasn't. The bench is a great motivator. Yeah.
Amen.
Bobby Knight, he had a little speech when it came to that, but
That's right. He does. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a great one to listen to every once in a while, right?
Yes. And throw a few chairs, guys. No, I'm just kidding. I don't condone violence. All right.
I got a story about that sometime. I'll tell you.
Absolutely. All right. You guys ask the next question because we're running short on time.
Go try.
Yeah. I was just going to say, most people retire, stay retired. What made Nottoway Valley that opportunity appealing to you enough to come back out of retirement?
My wife had a lot to do with that. I'll be honest with you, because she has been a nursing administrator for 30 plus years. And when we came here, it was a 5-year gig. When we came here in 2016, she said, I got 5 years. And this will be 10 years now that we're on. And so I've always bet the over on what she said she's going to retire. But she actually hired a replacement. And so she's going to pull the trigger in the gym. Now you got to understand, she's a superstar, right? She just got published in Forbes magazine. It's supposed to be coming out here before long on things she did at the hospital.
Wow.
So we're Skip calls me up, and we're in the truck going something. I mean, we might have been going to Waukee. Hey, I got this. What do you think? And I went, will you commit? I don't know, coach. I don't know. We get off the phone, and my wife gave me this, what I call the death stare. And she could suck the soul right out of you. And then you would say thank you when it's over with.
See, Derek, it's not just me. Huh? It's not just me.
Good catch.
So, she saw me. So last year I had a shoulder replaced. I got both my shoulders replaced. And I had to go through, a lot of rehab with the shoulder and doing that. So I knew I couldn't be on the sideline. Some kid hits me and I'm freaking screwed. But I think she saw I was really having trouble last year adapting to. I work out every day, right? Okay, so I've got a home gym and I work out and I walk every day. I've got a routine. I hit every coffee shop in frickin' St. Joe at a different time. And, but by noon, I'm like, I'm lost, right? And she really she kept nudging me that, yeah, you just can't be sitting around. I think we'll drive each other crazy. I don't know. We've been to Arizona the last 2 Januaries, and it was kind of a test run for her and me. And the first time we went down, she lasted about a week and then went batshit crazy and couldn't handle it. Now last year went down and she made it about week 3 and she was okay. And I think she's really hitting at this, excuse me, that we're going to have a little trouble coexisting if I don't have my mind someplace else. So that really helped kind of nudge me in that direction. Now, it's a small school. I think we had our first meeting last 2 weeks ago. We had 38 kids show up for the meeting, and we'll be meeting with the parents here next Monday. We're going to have our senior draft, draft our teams, going to get that going. So my juices are flowing. A little bit. Coach Eckhart's given me the opportunity to just kind of run with, because he's still teaching in Shenandoah. I got time, right? I got time because I'm not on anybody's timetable. So the juices are flowing. I'm messing around with the social media there on the Facebook page. I'm sending stuff out. I'm doing this. So I'm starting to kind of the motors. The wheels are turning, the rust is coming off. I'm starting to put the offensive playbook together. So I think here's the thing. It's not. I did a phone interview with Scott Campbell, longtime sports editor for the North Scott Press. It was when I think it was right after North Scott won the state championship, and he wanted to do an article with me because I had the opportunity to just kind of help build that program a little bit. And he asked me about at that point in time I wasn't coaching. I just gotten done maybe. I can't remember what year they won that. But I said, Scott, the deal is, I think in this business, I want to be relevant, right? I want some relevance in my life. I don't know if purpose, relevance, whatever you want to call it, but I love being around kids. I love practice, right? I like the challenge of the organization of practice, and scheming up the scripts and doing all that type of thing. I love the tactics of the game, the competition. It keeps you young, right? I mean, I just turned 70, and somebody said, well, how does it feel to be 70? Shit, I don't know. It's just a number, right? It's just a number. So those juices begin to flow. The games, the game has given you so much through the years. And I always tell our players this, there's going to come a time when you need to give back to this game, right? You're going to become a father, and your son's going to be an athlete, or daughter's going to be an athlete, but the game of football has given you so much that you have to give back to this game, and I'm not talking to you guys if it's not for my wife and this game. I'm just not. I mean, it's those two things, and there's other people involved in that. I had some great coaches in high school. Well, I had the opportunity to be coached by 4 Hall of Famers.
Wow.
High school Pekin. Tom Stone, Hall of Fame football. Davis Idle, Hall of Fame track, still coaching. The guy's like 83 years old or something like that. Hall of Fame, National Coach of the Year. Jerry Staten, who won state title at Oskaloosa years ago, was my junior high wrestling coach, Hall of Fame football. Bill Rex, Hall of Fame wrestling. Okay. All in little old Pekin, 4 Hall of Famers. And at that time, and did I realize that? Probably the biggest guy that had the most influence on me was a Vietnam combat vet named Ronnie Shock. Took me under his wing when I was a junior in high school. He had just been in a real bad car accident, about killed him. Think about that. The guy spends 13 months in Vietnam, in the jungles of Vietnam, comes back unscathed and almost get killed in a freaking car wreck.
Wow.
But he had taken me under his wing, and he really got me into the strength aspect of stuff and the training and the Marine Corps. Man, I mean, this guy was nuts, but he had a tremendous impact on me at that time. Young, impressionable, angry young guy in 1973, right? And so I owe so much to Ronnie. He ends up getting killed in a freaking car wreck. 2 kids, 3 kids. So yeah, there's been so many people that at the time I didn't realize, the impact they were having. But looking back on it, I'm going, God, that's where it started, right? Here's the thing. So my dad was a mechanic. My mom was the Avon lady, right? She knew everybody in freaking Keokuk County. Everybody. And my dad just went to worked 12 hours a day and came home. I mean, that's what he never saw me play a down of football ever. Never. So it was not them pushing me. It was me finding a way to do it, and then I got around some really good people that helped with that. So, and then, so I as I always look back on that, it's, man, this game has just opened so many freaking doors for me. So many doors. And, I wasn't a scholarship player. I wasn't a tremendous athlete. It's just hanging in there every freaking day and battling, and that resiliency, is so important. Right.
It's crazy because I think that might have been our fastest interview yet, gentlemen.
100%.
Probably.
100%. That was awesome.
Hey, we appreciate having you on. We'll probably have you back on.
Coach, my schedule is pretty clear,
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
And I'm thinking maybe Dog Pound should make a trip up there for summer workouts, get an interview with the Nottoway Valley and, get some skipisms,
Yeah.
you know.
Believe me, Coach Eckert's got a lot of them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We appreciate everything. You've listened to Coach Randy Schrader on the Dog Pound Radio app and the Coaching Culture in Athletics Radio Broadcast Network.